What is up, guys? Rick Hack is here discussing my hands-on experience with the Titanfall 2 multiplayer. In this video, we're going to be talking about the new features added into Titanfall 2, what differs from Titanfall 1 and 2, and whether or not I enjoyed my experience with the Titanfall 2 multiplayer. Now, I got to play Titanfall 2 recently at EA Play. I was invited out to LA to attend a special Titanfall 2 event where myself and a few other YouTubers were able to play the game for a decent amount of time early. We were also given some exclusive Titanfall 2 multiplayer gameplay, which you can see playing in the background during this video. A lot of it was from the trailer, but there's actually quite a bit of it kind of extended beyond what was in the trailer, and actually featuring some new weapons that weren't seen in the official multiplayer trailer, so that's definitely pretty cool for Titanfall fans. Now let's get started by discussing what new features were added in the Titanfall 2 multiplayer. Now, in the version of the game I played, you could choose between 3 different pre-constructed pilot loadouts and 2 different pre-constructed Titan loadouts. And these loadouts were definitely designed in a way to show off a lot of the new features that were added. So let's start out by discussing pilots. What new is added for pilots? Now, let's start out here with weapons. So the 3 different loadouts you could choose from, each one had different weapons. The first loadout you could choose was the Rifleman. It had the classic Titanfall carbine, the R101C carbine, I believe it's called. That's returning from the original Titanfall. Very much still similar to what it was in the original Titanfall. Very powerful gun. I thought that maybe it had a little bit more recoil to kind of tone it down from what it was in the original Titanfall, but it was still a very powerful, very easy to use weapon. The second loadout was very interesting. It was kind of a more close range loadout, and it featured a laser SMG. Now, this thing was crazy, and I ended up really enjoying. I didn't really like it at first, but by the end of my play session, I was really enjoying this SMG. And this SMG actually is kind of one of the main features that they added with Titanfall 2, in the fact that they're actually experimenting a lot more and adding a lot more futuristic weapons. Because if you think back about Titanfall 1, it was obviously a very futuristic game. You had these massive titans and spaceships and all this stuff, but all of the weapons were actually incredibly modern, right? Like, you had all of these rifles and carbines and submachine guns and sniper rifles that are all actually pretty similar to what's available right now. They're all shooting their traditional bullets that you find in modern guns. But with this SMG, this was shooting lasers, like something not seen really in Titanfall 1 in terms of primary weapons, and it had a really cool kind of dynamic to it, because this SMG, it was good for close quarters, not because of a damage drop-off, which I thought was really interesting, because this SMG could melt people across the map as long as they weren't moving. Because the thing that really made this SMG good in close quarters was because the lasers had this kind of travel time. They moved slowly. You could see them move towards the enemy. So if you're trying to engage enemies in kind of medium to long ranges, you had to really lead your targets, and you would often miss. So it just kind of naturally made you want to engage enemies in close quarters, where it was very effective. But again, the thing that really interested me about this weapon was it was very different than what we saw in Titanfall 1 with the weapons, and it shows that in Titanfall 2 they're experimenting a lot more. They're adding a lot more unique weapons into the game, which I am totally in favor of. The last weapon you could choose from was kind of a designated marksman's rifle, very powerful single shot rifle, but actually accompanied by kind of a medium closer range, almost like a red dot sight sort of scope. So that was very interesting. That is a very powerful long range weapon, but the sight was meant for kind of closer medium range engagements. You could definitely use it at long ranges, and I got some long range snipes with it, but it definitely wasn't a long range optic, which is awesome. It shows that you can still have the long range guns, that if your playstyle is that you want to use them in close quarters, you're still able to, put on a scope that's good in that scenario. So that's awesome as well. Now let's move off the weapons and talk about what abilities were present on these different pre-constructed classes. Now, each different class had 2 different ability slots, very similar to perk slots, but are really much better described as abilities. So you can select 2 different abilities for your pilot when you're creating your own class. For example, the Rifleman, which had the carbine as a weapon, its 2 different abilities were, firstly, the grappling hook. So the grappling hook that you're seeing in the background gameplay, you saw in the Titanfall multiplayer reveal trailer, that's actually not an intrinsic ability. That's actually an ability that you're going to have to equip to your character. So if you really like it and you love using the grappling hook, and by the way, the grappling hook was a blast to use in the multiplayer. I really liked how it actually kind of swung you up. Like, you could use your momentum, use your grappling hook, and actually, again, use your momentum to swing you out, like kind of like Spider-Man actually, and get to all of these crazy places, and it really did increase your mobility. But again, that's an ability that you have to select. If you really like it, you could put it on every class, but if you don't really like it, or you feel that you could go without it, you don't have to use it, and you can select a different ability. The other ability for the Rifleman class was just a normal, like kind of a Semtex grenade. They've actually added a bunch of new abilities that you can select for your pilots. For example, the SMG class had a grenade that shot the electric smoke that was available in Titanfall 1 for your Titan. So that's in the game now in grenade form, and you also had kind of a grenade that you threw and then it sent out a pulse that showed you nearby enemies like through walls and stuff. That was also very useful as well. Now for the Marksman's Rifle class, one of the new abilities was it had a grenade that you could throw. It was the kind of the black hole grenade that you saw in the original multiplayer reveal trailer, where you'd throw it and then all of the enemies would clump up and kind of be in the air floating together. That was a really fun grenade to use. I got a couple of pilots with it. One time I threw it and got 2 pilots sucked in together and I just destroyed them. It was a really fun grenade to use. Of note, all of these abilities actually don't have a certain amount that you can use. Like, it's not like in Call of Duty where you have, 1 grenade per life, or some perks could make it 2 grenades per life. Your grenades are actually respawn timed, so they will just constantly come back and keep respawning. You don't actually have an ammo count, and the same is true for your weapons. Now, for some games, this wouldn't work, and I know some of you are probably thinking, that's kind of concerning, but I found it, at least in my play sessions with Titanfall, I liked it because it lets you not worry about how many grenades you have left or how much ammo you had left, and you weren't trying to go to enemies' corpses to pick up their weapons or to resupply or whatever. You were just purely focused on the gameplay. And in a game like Titanfall, with such fluid gameplay, that is definitely one of the main features of the game, is its gameplay. It really lets you kind of immerse yourself in that without worrying about other things, again, like ammo count, like grenade count. So that's a very interesting thing to keep aware of. Now let's move on from pilots to what new features were added for Titans. And guys, there was a lot of new additions for Titans. Now, the first Titan loadout had as its weapon kind of an average chain gun that really didn't have anything too special about. The one thing that it did have kind of unique was that when you aim down sights, it seemed to spread out horizontally, so it kind of lets you mop up grunts, for example, really quickly. But also it has a few new abilities. Its first ability had the, a shield that is returning from Titanfall 1. You'd put the force shield, I forgot exactly what it was called, that would collect all of the bullets and then let you shoot those bullets and those missiles back at your enemy. That's returning into the game. And the other ability mapped to your other bumper was a laser that kind of came out of your Titan and fired a single straight laser beam at an enemy Titan or enemy. Very effective against enemy Titans, killed pilots with a single shot, so that was pretty cool. But very interestingly and very importantly is that, that describes Titans in Titanfall 1 basically. Is Titans in Titanfall 1 had their weapon, and then you could have 2 different abilities kind of mapped to the 2 different arms of the Titan. But there has been a entirely new third ability added for Titans, and it's mapped to, we were actually playing on the PlayStation 4, and it was mapped to the triangle button, which was kind of an overall just new ability for your Titan. So you can now have 3 different abilities for your Titan. For the chain gun Titan, it was actually this ability where you would throw 3 different, I guess they were kind of pillars or little things on the ground, and then there would be a laser beam that would connect each of these different pillars, creating a laser trap. So you could throw it down in a street and then run away, and then any Titans or pilots that would go through this trap would be damaged by it. So that was actually pretty cool. And the fact that they're just adding an entirely new third ability to add on to your Titan really increases the degree of diversification within Titanfall 2, so I'm hugely in favor of that. Now moving on, the next Titan you could select was very unique, featured a bunch of stuff, pretty much all of its abilities that were not available in Titanfall 1. And this Titan's weapon was a flaming cannonball shooter. And you may be sitting there thinking, Rick, did you just say a flaming cannonball shooter? Yes, I did. this thing was crazy. It shot a ball of flames that would arc towards your target. After each shot, you had to reload your weapon, so it was like a single shot weapon, and then when the flames hit the ground, they created kind of a small explosion and then left a lingering fire damage on the ground. Really effective against Titans, obviously extremely effective against pilots. It was a one-shot kill if you could actually get the shot, because they were a little bit difficult to aim. Obviously, they kind of traveled slowly and arced towards the target, and pilots move very, very fast, but it was extremely fun to use. Now, this thing had two completely unique abilities we didn't see in Titanfall 1. The first ability to the left hand of the Titan was another shield, but it was like a flame shield. And this shield seemed to, I'm not exactly 100% sure on what it did. I think it damaged the enemies around it. Like, you could kind of pull out your flame shield, walk through a group of grunts and just kill them all, which was awesome. I'm not exactly sure if it had the same bullet stopping abilities, but the other ability to the other hand was just totally awesome. Now, your right bumper for your right hand of your Titan actually did a slam attack. So you'd press the right bumper and your Titan would just slam the ground with his fist, and a trail of fire would go forward, and it would damage anything within the initial wave of fire, and it would also leave kind of a lingering fire effect again on the ground, so anything that went through that still got damaged, or anything that remained in it after it got the first hit would still get damaged. So it was very effective against other Titans if they weren't paying attention. You'd slam the ground, damage them, and if they stayed in the area, they'd get damaged more and more and more. So that was a great ability. Now, the triangle ability was just really, really unique, and it was actually pretty crazy. So the triangle ability shot out this canister. So you'd press the triangle button, you'd shoot out this canister that would arc pretty aggressively towards the ground, but it would hit the ground, and then it would kind of, this device would pop up and it would start spraying this green cloud all over the place. Now, this green cloud was actually gas, and if you shot it after with your fire abilities, so then if you shot this canister, it started to produce the gas, and then you shot the gas with your primary weapon, which was the flame weapon, the entire thing would ignite in flames and just do massive damage to anything within it. Now, that is super interesting because it's an ability that completely relies on another aspect of your build, and I wonder if the game would allow you to use this ability and then, for example, not have any sort of flame weapon. So you'd be shooting this canister, it would produce a bunch of gas, but then it just wouldn't do anything. I hope so, because I like the idea of abilities that work in tandem with other abilities, so you can kind of design your build around these kind of synergies that work together on your Titan. Now, there's actually one more thing that was added into Titanfall 2 for your Titan, and that is the core abilities. Now, in Titanfall 1, you could activate, I think it was a speed core, a damage core, a defense core, and you would just press down on the D-pad, and if you had the damage core, for example, you'd activate this damage core, and then you'd just do more damage for a little bit. They were kind of underwhelming, not in their effect, but just in what they actually did. They were kind of boring. But in Titanfall 2, that has totally changed. Now, for the first Titan, for the chain gun, like machine gun Titan, its damage core was this triple laser. You'd press down on the D-pad and your Titan would get these 3 lasers that would shoot off to the distance, and then they would all converge on a single point, shooting directly out of your Titan's chest at, anything that was in the way, which is definitely pretty awesome. Now, for the Flame Titan, that Titan had the core ability that when you press down on the D-pad, when it was charged, you would slam the ground with both of your fists, and a giant wave of flame would kind of emulate from there and just do massive damage to the entire area. I actually got a Titan double kill on 2 other Titans with that ability. It was just a blast to use. Now, that is definitely another feature I'm really looking forward to in Titanfall 2, the fact that they've really kind of amped up what you can do for your core, and again, adding a bunch of new core abilities that aren't just the same 3 that were available in Titanfall 1 is really going to ramp up customization and diversification in the game. Now, that's it for the new Titan and Pilot weapons and abilities that I experienced with my time in Titanfall 2. There are some more changes, but this video would be like 40 minutes long if I went over everything in detail, so I'm going to probably save those other changes for new specific videos coming out in the future. So I'm going to wrap up this video by answering the question, did I enjoy Titanfall 2? And the answer is definitely yes. I had a lot of fun in the game. It is very, very indicative of Titanfall 1. If you enjoyed Titanfall 1, which I totally did, then you're probably going to enjoy Titanfall 2. It very much feels like a proper sequel to the game. It feels like Titanfall 1 just remastered, remade, and with a bunch of new awesome abilities at your disposal. Now that's it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating or sharing this video. If you want to see more Titanfall 2 content in the future, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.